Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I just read Echoes of Eternity by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, and it's probably my favorite siege novel thus far. Echoes of Eternity tells the story of the battle at the Eternity Gate between mostly the forces of the Blood Angels and the World Eaters. Sure, there's a lot more forces there, but these two legions and their Primarchs really take the spotlight in this novel. Furthermore, there is also the story of Vulcan traveling into the Webway to fight Magnus, and some shorter stories here and there that show the brutality of the siege. Finally, I should also note that the storylines of Keeler, the Perpetuals, and Katsuhiro do not appear in this book. ADB has instead elected to tell his story from a more focused and zoomed in perspective when compared to the other novels. All storylines tie into each other eventually, and there are a lot less scene jumps and filler characters. I personally really like this decision, as you get a much closer bond with the characters, which makes you much more emotionally invested. Not to mention that it becomes much easier to follow everything that's going on. One exception to this writing decision, however, is ADB's choice to randomly insert a Sanguinius Primarch novel in the middle of the book. During these 100 pages, we get to see the Revenant Legion, before their reboot into the Blood Angels. We get to see Sanguinius meeting the Emperor and thereafter being introduced to his Legion for the first time. This is then followed by some scenes where the World Eaters and the Blood Angels interact during the Crusade era before the Heresy, where we get to learn some more about the protagonists of this novel, as well as World Eater culture, the Primarchs, and Lothario Serene. I don't mind this final part that much, as it nicely provides the backstory of the two main legionaries followed in this novel. However, in Baal's name, why is the entire Revenant and Sanguinius origin story in the Siege of Terra book? I think ADB did a great job of portraying it, but why here, in the middle of this book? This also leaves me with a lot of questions in regards to what will be in the actual Primarch book that comes out later this year. Probably the biggest highlight of this novel, however, is how much of an emotional rollercoaster it is. One moment you'll be reading the most horrific descriptions of the siege so far, and another moment there's some comic relief. Another moment you will read about some epic speech or Primarch battle, closely followed by some paragraphs that will break your heart. There isn't a single boring part in this novel, and it was so captivating that I found myself finishing this book in basically 2 days. The author really brought his A-game here, and this book feels like the amalgamation of the best parts of his previous works. The tragedy of betrayer mixed with the dark humor of the Night Lords, the corruption of Black Legion, and the mechanicus weirdness of Master of Mankind. All of this and topped off with the horrific reality of Spear of the Emperor. In fact, about the last point, I would like to talk more about this, because holy moly, the portrayal of both the siege and in particular the World Eaters was absolutely brutal in this book. The World Eaters don't just become angrier because of the nails here, no, they truly become beasts, hacking and mauling at everything in their path. And during the parts from their perspective, we really see them lose it, as their writing style is completely transformed to fit their ruined psyche. For those who've read it, it's a bit similar to what happened in the Angron Primarch book. This is then accompanied by some of the most brutal gore I've read in Warhammer so far, with them bashing skulls until the brain starts leaking out and then proceed to laugh at the still twitching corpse. The scenes with Chaos Corruption then also did add another layer of body horror on top, with characters slowly rotting away as they fuse with their machines. In other words, this book is more deserving of the Warhammer horror label than half of its actual entries. Another portrayal that deserves some praise here are the two Mechanicus characters, of Arkan Land and T, the Scatarius. Arkan Land is a character with the awkwardness of a tech priest, the sassiness of a Night Lord, the cowardice of both, and an ego bigger than Belisarius. That already makes him awesome, but he also has a talking robot monkey with him, making him extra awesome. T on the other hand is a Scatarius, whose worldview and mannerisms are excellently weird, in a way that only the Mechanicus can have. They often serve as comic relief, and their interactions were absolutely brilliant. Oh, and another thing I should mention is that this book basically retcons Fury of Magnus. Which I'm not sure how I feel about. You'll understand what I mean once you get to the end of the Vulcan and Magnus storyline, but basically the entire plot of that book gets discarded in an offhand comment by Vulcan, which definitely made me raise some eyebrows. I suppose that it's a bit similar to the Buried Dagger and Warhawk, in the sense that you get to pick which truth you prefer for your headcanon. Then finally there's Sanguinius, whose portrayal here was probably the best he could have gotten. Many novels always talk about how beloved and precious Sanguinius is, but rarely do we get to see why he is viewed in that way. This novel radically changes this, as it shows rather than tells us all the qualities he is loved for. From the way he treats his sons during the rediscovery, to his battle speeches, and from the love for his brothers to his pact with the Emperor. Golden Hawk Boy really does turn out to be an angel. On top of this, the scenes where we get to see him in actual combat were absolutely brutal, and his fight with Angron was probably the best written Primarch fight I've read so far. This book also shows that whenever necessary, Sanguinius can be the vicious angel of death the Emperor made him to be. So all in all, I'm really happy that we got to see him like this before the events aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Altogether, I'm giving Echoes of Eternity a very well deserved 5 out of 5 Angels of Death. After the excellent Warhawk, I had high expectations for ADB's siege novel, and with this brutal rollercoaster of a novel, ADB has definitely exceeded those expectations. I said it for Saturnine, and it's also true for this one. It truly has all the things you could want from a siege novel. The portrayals are great, the siege is shockingly horrible, all in ADB's writing style and with some very memorable epicness. Definitely a recommendation, especially of course for Blood Angel and World Eater fans. Not to mention, you might want to read this if you can't wait for the Sanguinius Primarch book. Anyway, that's all I got for you today.
If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and click ringing the bell to appease the Great Horned Rat. For more lore content, please check my main channel and leave any book recommendations in the comments down below. I gotta get back to reading the next book.